Welcome to Talking Event Driven, the podcast about the world of event-driven architecture. You will hear seasoned professionals sharing invaluable insights about their challenges and experiences in event-driven architecture.
Hey, and welcome to the podcast Talking Event Driven. Today with me I have Wim Debreuck, EDA Architect at heart. But yeah, I think he's much better at introducing himself than I am. So Wim, go ahead.
What's in a name? But indeed, I've been working on event-driven architectures for the past 7 or 8 years. So that's you could say it's a real passion. In general, I've been working in the domain probably over more than 25 years, and did all kinds of architecture, functional information solution, and now event-driven architecture. But yeah, I don't want to see it as a separate something, but let's discuss that further in the talk.
Yeah, right. Yeah, indeed. We know each other. We know each other already for quite some time now. So I know you are a big fan or an enthusiast about business event-driven architecture. But what does that specifically differ, or what do you actually mean with business event-driven architecture?
Yeah, that's of course the real difference. Event-driven, let's say, that's nothing new. So the events were there from the start. Each CPU has an event structure. And the exciting thing to me, once we started with business event-driven architecture, that's, let's say, getting closer to reality. I'm very convinced if we would start over now, so if you would forget everything that we know about our IT domain and start from scratch today, we would find it very natural that we just would start with business event-driven architecture, because that's the normal, natural way of capturing a reality. A reality is event. Podcast started. So that's what's happening. So it's actually strange not to do business event-driven architecture. So to me that's the core of getting close to that reality.
Getting close to what businesses actually do and capture that behavior then.
Yes. Why do we query a table today to know if a user is registered? If you would start over, we just would express user registered. Now we need to query something and figure it out. Is that user registered, and what does that mean? What does that table property exactly mean? We need to do kind of evaluation, reverse engineering to figure out, that was actually the thing that happened. So that's it. What business event-driven architecture means is skip that reverse engineering stuff and just express very simple, in a semantic, meaningful way what happened.
Yeah, indeed. It's an interesting approach. Yeah. Of course, there's of course the reasons behind these, why we haven't been doing this for many years. This is a lot to do with technology, of course. We've needed to be able to do that. That's a big thing. The introduction of technology, streaming technologies like Kafka made a big difference in that manner. But more about that business event-driven approach. What's for you one of the biggest benefits about that? What's some main benefits that you see in the spheres in your past experience?
The question pops up time and time over and over again. And if I think about it, it's if you think about the main benefits, to me it's kind of linguistic. It's language, because each time that you push on your business event-driven architecture, each time that you define a business event, you add to the language. You add to a kind of common language that you use. Business is using it, engineering is using it. So the extension of your language, each anthropologist would tell you that language is the basic need for reasoning. And the richer that your language is, the more complex reasoning that you're able to do. So that addition to the language and using that language in every meeting and every discussion, knowing what we mean, avoiding assumption fuck up, is just so efficient and so valuable that would be the one thing that I would say is a real benefit of using business event-driven architecture. Of course, once you start doing it also has other advantages. It drives for example, it drives your boundaries. So we all know complex landscapes. We need to tackle that with domain-driven architecture. Some companies use platform strategy. Doesn't matter, but it's about setting boundaries to tackle that complexity. If you use business event-driven, it will push you and guide you to define those correct boundaries. So that's another very valuable, let's say, I would not say side effect, but it's a very valuable effect of driven architecture.
Defining those boundaries, indeed, the clarity that you have those ownerships over those specific domains and about that set of data and information, of course. And that's and every kind of architecture very valuable.
Yes, and of course, we all know that integration is hell. It's very difficult to do. We would like not to do integrations, so that's why we use monoliths and try to do everything with one system. History told us that that's very difficult, so we need integration. If you do integration with business event-driven architecture, that will be much more natural, and it's reusable. So
it's also
you are building a kind of foundational landscape where all systems just express in a very clear way what they are doing. Of course, you're using it for your integration, but that's not the only thing. You can use it to fuel your analytics space. You can fuel it for machine learning models. So it is that building of that foundation that is stable and it's good for years to come, because you're in your business events, you're abstracting technology. Let's say triple down, very specific vendor language, and so you're abstracting, making technology agnostic integrations, and that way making a very durable glue within your organization.
You could call it like, even it's not only integration anymore. It's like a reusable data product, actually, that you were talking about.
It's kind of integration. We look at integration as something
as a 30 thing.
Yes, and throw away, and it's something that we need to do, and it's just it evaporates. It's just temporary. If you switch that around and making your reality exposure the core of your company, then you have your integration, and then the integration is already there. You start from the integration.
Interesting approach in that, indeed. And then I remember one of your presentations that I saw from you, that you're always talking about, actually, it's just the next step in the evolution of EDA architecture.
Yes, that's why I in the beginning, I don't want to, let's say, get a stamp or let's say this is business event-driven architecture, and this is not. It is not kind of flavor of doing architecture in the one way or the other way. It's just to me, it's a maturity level. You evolve. You try to make things better. It's not easy because we are brainwashed by history, and it's very difficult to do things differently. But it's not a matter of kind of sidetrack or kind of flavor, or we're going to do this project business event driven and this project not. It's just evolving to the next stage of doing it in a better way, and it's just a next step in our I believe.
Yeah, because indeed, probably one of the biggest challenges we see, and you probably also saw, that we've been doing things already for 20, 30 years right now. We've been querying those tables. We've been doing this and that, but now you have to reverse that process. You have to think about it from an event approach. So the event thinking mentality. How do you do that? How do you get started with that?
Well, it is not to overemphasize it, because mostly we are already doing that. We are doing it already in an eventing-like way. If we want to get a grip on something and you want to design a system, the first thing that you do is, I don't know, event storming post-its, what is exposed, what is happening here. So it's a very small step to just translate that. It's actually easier, to my opinion. It's easier to then translate it in an event-driven design than the other way around. So your let's say your referential complexity is much lower than trying to design kind of state right away. It is. Don't exaggerate, and don't stick to that reality. I would say
keep it simple, keep it as it is.
Keep it simple. Yeah. Keep what is happening, and then you get a natural output towards your eventing.
Fully agree on that. Sometimes people want to go too micro on that, make it too granular on that, but indeed you just need to make sure that you keep you need to identify what's actually happening in there and try to share that those informations, those products actually across the landscape, only what's necessary.
And to indeed, but that it's not always easy, and you're not there right away, or you're not hitting the perfect level the first time, but that's not really the problem. And so the journey is even valuable than the result. Keep asking a question time and time over again. Is it a business meaningful something? So it's a business event. If you, and then, let's say if you have, is there kind of change of, let's say, customer name change? And that depends on the use case. Is that a business event or not? I don't know. In some areas, it will be a very important business, semantical, meaningful thing to express. In some businesses, it's just a trivial fact.
But it's always based on which situation that you're in or which context you are in, indeed, which is the most valuable one. I think for example, if we're thinking about insurances, everything which has to do with people is very important, for example. But when you're in the manufacturing and automotive sector, it's less important.
Perfect example.
But always the question is how to get started on that. That's those first baby steps, or those first small steps towards event thinking first. Do you have some tips on that?
Yeah,
how did you do it in some
start small? Yeah, I've learned that it's not possible to do it top down. Okay, you need to have some buy-in, of course, and you need to identify your stakeholders and try to do that as good as possible. But don't try to let's say, define a whole enterprise architecture policy to push down event-driven architecture. Start from a simple project, a small project. Try to nicely align that, if it's a proof of concept or a project, nicely align the policies, the guidelines, the manifests that we use for event-driven architecture. Nicely align that with what you're doing, and don't be afraid to adapt. It is still a guideline, and you have within each company that you need to stay pragmatic, of course, and
That's true.
sometimes critical or the criticism is made of, but we have too much constraints and we are a very large landscape and we're not able to shift and but that's not true. That's really not true.
You're not that complex as you think you are. Yeah.
No, I would say, I work for large companies, and if you can do it on that scale, you can do it everywhere. So
No,
that's
true.
not an excuse.
No, that is no. No, during those event storming workshops, when you are identifying all of these events, so business events during those steps and so on, always the crucial thing is to have the right people in those meetings, in those workshops, and that's the most critical part of having those event storming workshops. And one of the most fun thing I always experience when having those event storming workshops is those aha moments. When sudden people from the other domain is like, okay, is it working like this? Or somebody, even their own manager or their own responsible.
Yeah.
Is like,
mostly a lot of people, and that's not a negative thing. You just are used to doing it year by year the same way, so you don't think about the process anymore. So it can get really inspiring for the people that are doing it day to day.
True. Yeah, indeed. So then talking about business event driven and so on, what's according to you one of the things that will change in the future? What's some emerging upcoming possibilities that you think about?
It's not science fiction, but to my feeling and to my own reality, I'm working on two let's say next level areas related to business event driven architecture. One of them is using event driven or business event driven within solution architecture. And so mostly in a lot of introductions of business event driven architecture, you're applying it to an existing landscape. That's the first thing that you do. You're applying it to an existing landscape, and perhaps with a couple of projects. But how can you build that in the core of solution architecture? What's the good approach to define a solution architecture using those business events from the start? And strange thing, if they exist or not, that's not important. So you can think about them later on if you're really gonna materialize them and use them, or just use them in a conceptual way. And just to stretch it, you can define a business event, and in reality, it could be a CSV file that is FTP. I don't know, but to use that in that solution architecture is very valuable. That's the one area, and the second area that I'm very passionate about. I'm really very excited that way of thinking gets more and more traction. Is something that is originated by system dynamics. A kind of modeling technique that emerged even in the 50s is now getting traction because it is based on events. It is based on behavior, and you need to stop talking me related to the subject, because I can go on forever. But just in a nutshell, that business events are owned by the domain, right? So it's you have a clear owner. You have a domain specific business event that says, okay, service task started, and that's the domain of the service domain. Within that domain, you're clearly expressing behavior. That's already good. You're expressing from a kind of more transactional, immutable way what happened. Service task created, service task finished, things like that. But if you think about it, every domain has also another kind of behavior. You have a kind of level behavior. I've called it platform dynamics. It is owned by the specific platform. It's a kind of dynamic. It goes up, it goes down. And if you think about reality, you could see it as, for example, the speed of a car. I'm driving 80 kilometers an hour. That's my car dynamic. Now it's 80. Now it's 85, or now it's 75. It goes up, it goes down. It is always there. It's not transactional. It's not immutable. It's a dynamic. It goes up and down. But it is sourced, of course, from what is happening within your car. Or you're pushing the pedal. Do you have a backwind? You have perhaps 1,000 parameters that influence your speed of the car. Mm-hmm. But that behavior of that car, that speed, is still something that is very interesting, valuable, owned by the car itself, because nobody else can tell how fast that car is driving.
Except for the car.
Yeah. And so that concept of really defining that platform dynamic, that behavior within the domain, having a clear definition of this is the platform dynamic. It is sourced by these business events. It is expressing these metrics. This is my behavior. Mm-hmm. Is a really upgrade and a very natural evolution of business event-driven.
It opens a lot of doors, actually, if you talk about it. So you're not talking about cars and so on, but if you're talking about, let's say, inventory, or you're talking about machinery.
Inventory levels, workload levels. It's kind of bottleneck thing, and you can apply KPIs. But the nice thing about it, and it also has to do, of course, with that what we call within our domain that shift left movement. We are shifting left. What's meaning we try to push the data creation and the data definition to the producer, and not leave the interpretation and evaluation to the consumer. It is the producer that says, this is my inventory level.
That's the only place that they know what it exactly means. True.
And so that's also that platform dynamic defines, this is my inventory level at this moment in time. I'm going to tell you when it's changing, and I'm going to tell you why it changed, and I'm going to give you the delta. But you, as a consumer, do not need to know the logic to calculate that.
That's true. Interesting. Well, yeah, indeed. I think based on the passion that you're talking about it, that we can go on for another half hour at least.
Yes, and it's very, very exciting.
I see you need to hold back, but maybe let's keep that for another podcast session somewhere later down the line.
Yes, my pleasure.
If you would say, like, to fellow architects in the same area, or wanted to start with event-driven architecture, do you have some final advice to them?
Start as soon as possible. Start now. There's no argument to wait. I would say as soon as you start, as soon you will feel the benefits.
And some pains probably as well. Yeah.
And some pains, but there's believe me, the benefits will top the pains.
Okay. Great advice, Wim. I want to thank you for joining our podcast.
No problem, my pleasure.
It has been a pleasure hearing talking about event-driven architecture, business event-driven architecture. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye, Wim.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Talking Event Driven. We hope you enjoyed the insights and stories shared by our incredible guests as much as we did. If you found value in today's discussion, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Stay tuned for more enlightening conversations. Until next time, keep innovating and stay event-driven.